And now, Madam Speaker, I want to turn to Representative Renee Ellmers. Renee is not on the Committee of Armed Services, but you know what? This lady works incredibly hard for our nation and for our servicemen and women. She studies all the time. I have had countless discussions with her. She's always wanting to know the detail to make sure that Fort Bragg, that the servicemen and women who serve there get all the resources that they need. She takes their combat readiness so very serious because she knows that the lives are on the line there. And, you know, Fort Bragg could not ask for a stronger advocate. And I'm very impressed and I'm very thankful for her support and going above and beyond, not being on the committee in jurisdiction, to be here tonight and to really make her voice to be heard all throughout this land and why we need to get behind the Posture Act. And so I'll just say last before I turn it over to her that, look, part of what I know that Representative Ellmers is working on is a very important supporting element for our land forces, the 440th, which is based out of Fort Bragg and Pope Army Air Base. And, you know, I know from firsthand experience, this is an incredible outfit. We're concerned about some decisions that are being taken here. And I want to yield now to the gentlelady for as much time as she may consume.
Thank you to my colleague, Mr. Gibson. And I just want to start right off by saying, Madam Speaker, that our colleague, Mr. Gibson, has been a tireless voice for our military and certainly has been a resource for me and has always been more than open and honest with me when it comes to decisions that are facing our military and national security. And I just want to thank you, sir, for your service, but then also coming to Washington to serve your country yet again and to be such an advocate for the military and to be such a support for the rest of us who are trying to help in that capacity as well. I am here tonight to discuss in this special order the introduction of the Posture Act, and I thank the gentleman for this great piece of legislation. The Posture Act is an important piece of legislation that will prevent further troop reductions and improve military readiness. As a representative of Fort Bragg based in North Carolina, I have the unique perspective to see how this troop drawdown is directly impacting our national security. It is my top priority to ensure that we restore our military's end strength, not only to serve as a deterrent, but also so that our military can appropriately and effectively respond to any threat represented to our country or our allies. The Posture Act will ensure that our troops are ready and prepared to defend our nation at a moment's notice. I would also like to thank Mr. Gibson for his help raising awareness about the serious issues facing Fort Bragg, including the deactivation of the 440th Airlift Wing. The 440th Airlift Wing provides unparalleled support for Fort Bragg paratroopers, more specifically the famed 82nd Airborne Global Response Force, a unit Mr. Gibson knows well, and as he was the commander of this force just a few years back. Because of the potential deactivation of the 440th Airlift Wing, I have been having this very discussion about maintaining military readiness and maintaining sufficient troop levels for the last 2+ years. This certainly is not the first time I have stepped foot onto the House floor to rail against the Air Force's ill-conceived decision to deactivate the 440th. In fact, I have stood in this very spot and stressed my concern about the threats their decision poses to the readiness of the Fort Bragg paratroopers. Unfortunately, what I thought was going to happen is indeed taking place as we speak. While the Air Force has promised they would continue to provide necessary airlift support for Fort Bragg, the Air Force is already falling well short of this promise. Fort Bragg aims to complete 10,000 jumps a month to prepare troops for combat, but the Air Force's decision to prematurely hollow out this wing has prevented them from meeting this jump goal. Last month, only 6,100 paratroopers jumped from Air Force planes. In fact, the Air Force has even fallen short on Fort Bragg's 8,000 jump minimum, a number they consider to be their threshold for proficiency. This is yet another consequence, and unfortunately, it is a concrete example of how drawdown can and will affect military readiness and training. Not only have I met with Fort Bragg leadership, but I've also met with our nation's top military officials, and still, to this day, I do not understand why the Air Force insists on making decisions on zero strategic merit. To make matters worse, deactivation of the 440th is happening at a time when the 18th Airborne Corps was recently called upon to lead the fight against the Islamic extremist group ISIS. Members of the 18th Airborne Corps are set to deploy this summer. Meanwhile, we are on the track to have the smallest size army since the end of World War II. Russia has become increasingly aggressive, and China's military presence continues to grow in Southeast Asia. All the while, our president insists on drawing down our military and cutting its funding. This is not the time to be cutting our military. This is the time to strengthen it. Mr. Gibson's bill ensures we will have appropriate end strength to keep our nation and our allies safe and secure. I look forward to continuing to work with Mr. Gibson and standing by him in this capacity, as I believe that strengthening our military is one of the most important issues facing Congress to date. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield back the remainder of my time.
Well, I thank the gentlelady. I want to thank her for her strong voice. I want to thank her for the attention to detail that she puts into this. This is so critically important, and it is very instrumental in the momentum that we've had. Your great voice, your staff's hard work, your hard work, and we're going to continue to push forward with this, with the Posture Act, and continue to make sure that the entire installation at Fort Bragg has the necessary resources to deliver and to get its mission done and to look after and take care of its servicemen and women, those paratroopers, and also the families. So thank the gentlelady.